So good evening once again. Welcome to our plant science classes. So today we are dealing with the third chapter of plant breeding. So what is the chapter name? You guys have read something or what?
Plant introduction.
Plant introduction. Very good. So we are dealing today with plant introduction. So this is a very easiest chapter you can find in plant breeding course. So it consists of most of the examples type of things. So you have to remember those examples. Nothing much is there to explain in this chapter. So we'll have a quick wind up of this chapter today. So what do you mean by plant introduction? Can anybody say what is plant introduction? Come on, I need answers.
When we introduce a new plant variety or species where it has not been grown before, that's not a plant introduction.
Okay, it is the introduction of a plant species into a place where it is not grown before. So it is just like introducing a plant to any of the new area where it is not present earlier. That is what plant introduction is there. So what are the two types of plant introduction?
Primary and secondary.
Okay, primary and secondary. So what is primary introduction?
Where the variety is introduced without alteration in the original genotype.
Okay, any more? Can you be some more little bit precise or somewhat different kind of definition for it? You are right. So can anybody define it differently?
It's like it is well adapted to that new environment. So it is commercially introduced.
Yeah, it can
as
be
a variety.
Released as a variety. So wherever we introduce that material or whatever the plant variety, that will adopt into a newer area. So it can be directly released as a variety there. So it is also called as a direct introduction. Why do you think so?
Because there are no pre-breeding procedures involved.
Yeah, we don't make any changes or any breeding procedure for this material which we introduce. It is directly released into the environment. That is why it is also called as a direct introduction. So when some material is coming from different place which is not present in your original area, so what you can call that material? That is an exotic.
Exotic.
To which it is introduced, it will become an exotic species, right? Where it is not present earlier. So what do you mean by secondary introduction? What do you do in the secondary introduction?
Ma'am, we select the superior genotypes, or we can also hybridize by taking like one gene from that particular variety or like that.
Okay, very good. So whatever the material which is introduced is subjected to selection. So after selection, you will come up with a new variety or new material. So that is then released. Okay. So it is not directly released into the environment. So it will be subjected to selection or any hybridization procedure. You will come up with a new material from that. Then only that material is used or adopted to your environment where you have been introduced. Oh, just a second. Okay, sorry for the disturbance. So this is the secondary introduction. It is also called as a indirect introduction. So what are the examples for primary introduction?
Sonar
64 Lerma Rosa.
Yeah, very good.
PN1 and IR8.
PN1, IR8, Sonara 64, Lerma Rosa. So they are all the examples of the primary introductions. So what about secondary introductions?
Sonalika Kalyan Sonam.
Yeah. Sonalika, and Kalyan Sona. So these are the examples of the secondary introductions. So since it is most of the examples kind of things, I'll go with the notes. I'll take the flow with the notes only. So we have the definitions for the plant introduction. It is nothing but taking a plant into a new area where it is not grown before. So we have seen primary introduction and secondary introduction. And this kind of introduction, primary introduction, is less common. We don't see this kind of introduction very frequently. So this is very common. Even our green revolution is associated with this kind of introduction only. Okay. So we have seen the examples also. Sonara 64, Lerma Roja, TN1, IR8. You have to remember the examples. Examples are very important. Okay. IR28 and IR36. Here Kalyan Sona and Sonalika. So it is also called as a direct introduction. This is an indirect introduction. So next we have the history of plant introduction. History is nothing but they have mentioned from where the different crops have been introduced to India. This is what we see in the history part. Okay, you have to remember these examples. Nothing much is there in the history, only the examples. So as I have mentioned here, from the Central Asia, mung bean, mustard, apple, here, walnut, quinine, and rubber are introduced into the India. Okay, from Africa. So I have given here a list so that it will be easy for you guys to remember. So from Africa, it is sesame, jowar, arhar, Gossypium herbaceum, and finger millet has been introduced. So these are the some other examples, so which you have to memorize. So if you guys want, we can have a quick question answer session for this in the next class so that I can know how much you remember this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So be sportive. Next class, I should get
Yes, ma'am.
quick answer for this. So next we have so plant introduction is going on. So what are the agencies which are involved in this plant introduction? Agencies. Anybody remember? What are all the agencies which are responsible?
NBPGR, APRI,
Yeah, very good.
BRI, B,
PGR,
BSF,
FRI,
Botanical Survey of India.
Botanical Survey of India. Very good. So we'll see them next. So firstly, NBPGR is concerned with the introduction of the materials. So it has been established in 1976. It is located at New Delhi. So all the agricultural as well as the horticultural crops are introduced through the NBPGR. So next, Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. It is concerned with the introduction of the forest trees. So Botanical Survey of India is concerned with the introduction of the botanical and medicinal plants. So they'll ask you only this kind of questions, like with which crop they are associated with the introductions. Nothing much is needed in this part. So this is one information that all the introductions, whatever that happens in India, all must be routed through this NBPGR. You keep that in mind. So NBPGR is a central agency for the export as well as the introduction of the germplasm. Okay, this is one of the important point you have to remember. So next, coming to purpose. So why do you think so? Why do we need this plant introduction? Can anybody list what is the reason we need plant introduction? What might be the purpose? Anybody?
To increase the diversity.
Okay, good. To increase the diversity. Anybody else?
It provides new crop species.
Yeah, very good. It provides a new crop species. Any other answers?
I'm also to fulfill our objectives like high yield or like disease resistance. We in secondary introduction because we take gene from that and
Yeah,
hybridize.
very good. So let us say for research purpose. Any other guesses? Okay, we'll say them one by one. So as somebody has mentioned, it is to serve as a new crop. So it is like wherever the crop is not at all present entirely, it will be a new crop. So that crop will be introduced into a newer area. So for example, maize, potato, tobacco, they were all not present earlier in India. They were come to the India through the introductions only. They served as an entirely new crop species. So, or it could be for the new varieties. You don't want a new crop. You have the crop, but you want a new varieties in that crop. Then you go for the introduction of the new varieties. For example, TN1, IR8, Sonara 64, and Larmaroja, through which the Green Revolution was possible. And also here also you have to remember these examples. So Ridley wheat, Kent oat, they are introduced from the Australia. So their place of origin will be important. So here Bonneville and early Badger peas, these three are important. Bragg, Lee, Clark, they are the varieties of soybean. So they have been introduced to India. And Sioux tomato is from the USA. Their place of origin is important. I'm telling you again and again. So Delcrest and Virginia gold tobacco are also introduced to India as a new variety. So, and also we have some of the varieties which are selected from these introductions. So we introduce, after we select, and we have come up with other varieties. What are those? I have mentioned one here. Kalyan Sona, Sonalika. So these are the varieties which come through the selections. So in pearl millet, we have Pusa Lal, Pusa Sunihari. Sorry, Pusa Lal and Pusa Sunihari are from the sweet potato. So Japanese white and 40 days radish, Pusa Basmati vegetable cowpea are also the selections from the introductions. So, or it could be to utilize in the crop improvement. One of you has mentioned this, to utilize in the research purpose. So Meerut and Sioux is actually introduced from the USA. So through the hybridization of those two, they have selected this Pusa Ruby tomato. Or it could be to save the crop from the disease or the pest. So if there is an epidemic condition is there in some place, so you have to save the crop, or else the whole crop will get eliminated from the nature. So in order to save the crop, you will introduce it into the newer place. So one such example is coffee. So from Africa, it is introduced to South America to prevent it from the leaf rust. So next reason could be for the scientific studies or for your aesthetic values. So these are the purpose. Why do we go for the plant introductions? So what is the procedure of plant introduction? Can anybody briefly say what is the procedure we follow for the plant introduction?
Procurement, quarantine, cataloging, evolution, multiplication, and distribution.
Very good. Multiplication and distribution. So we'll see them. So procurement. So as I have already mentioned that all your procurement should be routed through your NBPGR. Okay. How these materials can be obtained? It can be obtained as a gift. Either you can receive it as a gift, or it can be for a germplasm exchange. If you have given them some of the germplasm earlier, in exchange, you can take other germplasms also, or you can purchase them from the other place, or you can go for the exploration on yourself and collect the materials. So in what form you can collect them? Either you can collect them as a propagule or as a seed. Okay. So when we see this procurement phase, we can see some of the examples where the import and export has been restricted in India. So these examples are important. So they have mentioned that cocoa and Theobroma species from Africa, Ceylon, and West Indies has been restricted to the India. So these restrictions might be because these crops are associated certain diseases or pests or some other problems where even through the quarantine measures, they cannot eliminate them. So that's why they have completely restricted the entry of these crops into the India from certain places where those diseases or the pests are frequently occur. Okay. So sugarcane is restricted from the Australia, Fiji, New Guinea, and Philippines and West Indies. So as I have mentioned, it is all of examples. Don't worry. You can mug up or you can remember whatever you have to remember these examples. Rubber is restricted from America and West Indies. So sunflower from Argentina and Peru. So unguined cotton, Mexican, jumping beans is also restricted. So cotton, bersim, linseed and sugarcane seeds through the letter post is restricted. Okay, so you have the material. You have got the materials through the NBPGR. How do you get the materials? So what procedure you follow? How do you get from the NBPGR? So you have to file an application that you are recruiting some material from other place, so that you will put an application for your sender, and the same application copy you will give it to NBPGR, so that NBPGR will process it at the earliest and release your material after quarantine. Okay. So quarantine, what do you mean by quarantine? I have displayed it, but I want answers from you. What is
Ma'am, we're preserving that material.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Come again.
Ma'am, we're preserving that material or that plant.
Preserving? No, it is
Yeah.
not preserving. Anybody else?
Keeping
we
and
are
screening the
isolating.
materials so that it does not contain any pest or disease.
Yeah, very good. So we will keep the material in isolation and screen them in order to make sure that they are free from any kind of disease or pest or any of the problems. It could be associated with any of the virus or whatever. So quarantine is nothing but it is a keeping a material in isolation to prevent the spread of the disease present in that material. So which are all the agencies which are concerned with quarantine? So have you heard of this Destructive Insect and Pest Act? So it has come in the 1914. So all the plants imported into the India, it says that the act says that all the plants which are imported to the India must be free from disease, insect pest, as well as the weed seeds. Okay. So presently this act is known as a plant quarantine order. It has been renamed in or amended in 2004. So for the bulk introduction of material, either it could be for the consumption or sowing or planting purpose, it will be handled by the Directorate of Plant Protection, Quarantine and Storage. So it has come in 1946. So in this, you have to remember NBPGR, FRI, Botanical Survey of India, and Plant Quarantine Order, Directorate of Plant Protection, Quarantine and Storage. So these are all important and their year. So you have to remember. So if it is a small sample for any cultivation or the research purpose, it will be routed through NBPGR, FRI, and Botanical Survey of India. So what do you mean by phytosanitary certificate? So I have mentioned here. So don't look at the slide. You can say what is phytosanitary certificate.
Ma'am, this certificate is needed for introduction. Otherwise, it won't be eligible for introduction in any country.
Yeah, very good. So what does this certificate say?
Okay, Roopa, sorry.
That the material is free from disease,
audible?
pests, or anything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Hello.
just make your screen like make your video. Hello, pin your video on the screen.
Okay. I think it's it. Hello.
Yeah, audible.
Okay. What does this phytosanitary certificate will say? someone was telling?
The materials are safe for the introduction.
Yeah, it will say that the material is completely safe for the introduction into a new area. So phytosanitary certificate. So it is a certificate from the sender certifying that the material, whatever he is sending, it is free from any kind of weed seed or associated disease and pest. That is what phytosanitary certificate will say. So it is very important for the introduction purpose. So how does the quarantine will take place? Anybody can briefly say? How much time it will take quarantine?
Ma'am, 3 weeks.
Yeah, very good. 3 weeks. So what they do in PPGR people? So upon introduction of the material, what are all the things they'll take care of? Or what are all the criteria they'll look into?
Ma'am, firstly, they will screen the material. If
Okay.
it is found that it is there is some disease or pest associated with it, they will try to fumigate it, and if it's not curable, then they will destroy it at the center itself.
Yeah. Fumigate it. And also it is necessary that before sending, the sender should not treat the material with the any of the fungicide or the pesticide. So he should not treat them before sending. So after coming here, they'll screen the materials for any of the disease, pest or weed seed. If found so, they'll try to grow the material and they'll try to eliminate the disease or whatever it is there. So if not possible, then the material will be destroyed at the bureau itself. Okay. So that is what the quarantine does. So next we have the then cataloging of the imported material and their evaluation and then multiplication and distribution. This is after we receive from the NBPGR. So what is acclimatization?
Adjusting and adapting to the new environment.
Yeah, very good. It is adjusting to the new environment. So it is a process that leads to the adaptation of a variety to a newer environment. So whenever we introduce a new variety into a newer place, it has to first acclimatize to the environment. Then only it is possible to survive. So this acclimatization depends mainly on its mode of reproduction. So why do you think so? Mode of reproduction?
Because, for example, if sexually reproducing crops, there will be more variation, broader genetic base, and more adaptation.
Yeah, very good. So that too in sexually reproducing crops. So cross-pollinated crops will have more variation than the self-pollinated crops. So they'll get better adapted to the newer environment than the self-pollinated crops. And also it depends upon the magnitude of the genetic variability. So it is mentioned that genetic variability is a prerequisite for acclimatization. So greater the variability, better will be the acclimatizations. And also thirdly, it will depend on the life cycle duration. So annuals are better adopted than the perennials. Can anybody say why? Annuals have the better adoption than the perennials. It also depends on the magnitude of the variability they can produce. Because annuals on every year, they'll produce variations, they'll be undergoing reproduction process. So perennials take more time to get adopted and to produce the variability. That is why annuals will get adopted very quickly. So these are all the we have seen purpose. So we have mentioned so many positive purpose. Why do we need the plant introductions? So unknowingly we are also causing some of the threat to the ecological balance. So what are all the demerits associated with this introduction? Can anybody list?
Disease can be introduced.
Diseases. Okay. Diseases can be introduced. Any other reasons why it is considered as a disadvantageous thing?
With diseases, weeds, insect, pest are also introduced
Weeds, insect,
unintentionally.
yeah, unintentionally they might have introduced. Okay, very good. So we'll see them. So the first reason is the accidental introduction of the weed species. So we have so unknowingly we might introduce some of the weed species which compete with the native crop species. So gradually native crop species might get exhausted. Okay, some of the examples of Parsimony mexicana, Icornia species, Filaris minor. So they have entered into the India along with the plant introductions. So these are also important examples you have to remember. So they might also associated with the accidental introduction of the diseases. So what are all the examples? Late blight of potato. You must have seen this example in your plant pathology class. So late blight of potato is introduced in 1883 from Europe to India. So and also other examples are flax nut of wheat from Australia. It has been introduced. Coffee rust from Ceylon. Bunchy top of banana also introduced from the Ceylon. So you have to remember the examples. So insect pest, what are the examples? Potato tuber moth, it is from the Italy. Important. Okay. So woolly aphids of the apple and fluted scale of the citrus has also been introduced to the plant introduction. So ornamental. So you thought that it will be an ornamental plant, but unknowingly they have now become an weed species and posing a threat to our native species. So what are the examples? Water hyacinth, Lantana camera are the examples of such kind of weeds. So now they have become noxious weed that it is not possible to eliminate them. So it might also cause a threat to the ecological balance. So eucalyptus is one such species which is known with depleting the subsoil water reserves and pose a threat to the ecological balance. This is how unknowingly with the plant introduction, we have already introduced many of the diseases, weed species into our India and facing problem even today to eliminate them. So this is a brief class about plant introduction. So as I told, nothing much is there. You have to remember tomorrow we'll have a quick question and answer session for this class. So if you have any doubt on this, we can have the quick answer session. Any doubts you have?
Ma'am, please tell the introduction of Lantana camera from which country?
Okay, introduction of that is not okay. I have not seen from which country it has been introduced anywhere. So I'll look into it and tell you if that
Actually, ma'am, I saw that question, ma'am, two,
Okay.
three
I think
times.
Mexico is the answer.
What? I didn't hear it. Somebody
Ma'am, I think Lantana camara has been introduced from Mexico.
Mexico. Okay, I'll
Yes,
verify
I'm not
it.
confirmed.
Yeah,
Not
I'll
Mexico.
verify it and tell you in the WhatsApp group. Okay.
Maybe, ma'am, Sri Lanka or otherwise Australia. I have already read that about.
Okay, I'll confirm it. Don't have the doubt in that. I'll confirm in the WhatsApp group. Okay.
It is from USA, ma'am.
Everybody is coming with the different answers. So don't worry.
Yes, sir.
Any other doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, what is the role of multi-line varieties in introduction?
Multi-line?
मल्टीलाइन वेराइटीज जो मल्टीलाइन वेराइटीज इंट्रोडक्शन में की गई थी जैसे वीट की
See, introduction. What do you mean by introduction and why are you linking with the multi-line?
Ma'am, what was the role I am asking about in wheat varieties during
You're
the
not
introduction?
asking me about the introduction. You're asking me about the multi-line. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In multi-line, what you will do, you will mix many of the lines which are carrying the let us say you want a resistance for some kind of pathogen. Okay. So you'll mix many of the lines which are carrying the different resistance gene, so that you will get a broad spectrum resistance. That is the role of the multi-line. If you
Okay,
have
ma'am.
all the uniform line which is carrying a single resistant gene, if it becomes susceptible at some point of time, then all your material will get infected, right? That's why you will come up with a mixture of the materials, so which are carrying the different resistance gene for each line. So then you will get a broad spectrum resistance. That is the role of the multi-line. So any other doubts? So don't worry, we'll deal with multi-line in the upcoming classes. So you guys are ahead of us. So we'll also come there very quickly so that all your doubts will be cleared very early. So if you don't have any other doubts, we can wind up today's class. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.